Welcome to Healthy Aging Blueprint, your trusted space for simple, effective tips to help seniors live healthier, happier, and more meaningful lives. Whether you're stepping into retirement or supporting a parent or grandparent on their wellness journey, this channel is for you. Together, we'll explore real-life experiences, healthy daily habits, and a positive mindset to help you wake up each day with energy, joy, and purpose. Have you ever wondered why people slowly disappear from your life without saying a word? Why do some connections fade, not from conflict, but from silence? And what if the loneliness we feel is something we unknowingly create ourselves? My name is Walter, and I'm 78 years old. It's been nearly 8 long years since I began living alone, after the passing of my beloved wife. In that time, my life has grown quieter, the silence often heavy, filled with long hours of reflection. Only now, in this late chapter of life, have I come to understand something both painful and profound. It wasn't that the people I loved turned their backs on me. No, it was me. Without even realizing it, I had pushed people away. No one ever confronted me. There were no dramatic fights, no angry words, no clear moments of rejection. It didn't happen all at once. Instead, the truth crept in softly, through the small and subtle shifts that are easy to miss if you're not paying attention. I began to notice it in their eyes, a quiet discomfort, a flicker of hesitation. Conversations that once flowed with ease became filled with long, awkward pauses. Phone calls became less frequent. The visits I used to expect slowly stopped altogether. At first, I thought people were just busy, but over time, I realized something deeper had taken root. It wasn't betrayal. It was the slow unraveling of connection, caused not by what I said, but by how I behaved. Today, I want to share something deeply personal with you. It's a reflection that's taken me a lifetime to fully understand. I'll be walking you through the 12 harmful habits I developed over the years, habits I once dismissed as harmless quirks, but that, in truth, quietly drove people away. These patterns of behavior caused discomfort, frustration, and even sadness among those who cared about me. They were the invisible forces that eroded my relationships until I found myself alone, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. I'm not telling you this to seek pity or to linger in regret. I'm sharing it because if you're watching this, you still have time to do what I didn't. You still have a chance to pause, to reflect, and to change course. I hope that what I've learned the hard way can help you recognize the subtle ways we sometimes, without meaning to, push people away. We often don't realize how our actions, small, well-intentioned as they may seem, can quietly create distance between ourselves and the people we love. My hope is that by sharing my journey, you won't find yourself one day, years from now, sitting in silence, wondering where everyone went. Let my story serve as a quiet reminder, a gentle caution, to help you protect and nourish the relationships that mean the most before it's too late. Before we dive in, I'd be grateful if you could like this video. It helps keep the lessons of aging alive and relevant for others who might need them. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter in this journey. If this video resonates with you, leave a comment with the number 1. If it doesn't, I welcome your honesty. Just comment 0 so I know how to do better next time. Now, let's begin. 1. Repeating old stories too often, as if the past mattered more than the present. In my younger days, I saw myself as a storyteller. I took pride in weaving together memories of hard-won victories, missteps, and life's little surprises. Whether it was about how I juggled 2 jobs to buy my first car, or the summer I hitchhiked across the country with little more than a backpack and a dream, I believed I was sharing wisdom, preserving a legacy. These memories were, in my mind, like family heirlooms. They weren't just stories. They were me. But slowly, Almost imperceptibly, I began to notice a shift. Faces turned politely blank. Smiles grew thinner. Conversations grew shorter. My grandchildren would listen, but their attention wandered. My friends would nod along but not ask questions. It wasn't rudeness. It was subtle, and it was honest. They were yearning for a connection in the now, for me to show interest in their stories, their challenges, and the world they were navigating today. The turning point came when my daughter quietly said, "Dad, we love your stories, but what do you think about what's happening now?" That moment stayed with me. It was then I realized I wasn't just reminiscing, I was retreating. I've since learned to share only when it adds to the moment, and more importantly, to listen. I ask questions now. I show up for their lives, not just replay mine. The past will always be a part of us, but it shouldn't hold us back from being present with those we love. 2. Criticizing the younger generation. There was a time when I couldn't help but compare. I'd glance at young people, my children, their friends, even strangers in cafes, and silently judge. I'd grumble about their phones, their unfamiliar slang, or their careers that didn't resemble anything from my era. I chalked it up to wisdom. I thought I was passing down insight, warning them of pitfalls I had seen coming. But looking back, I realized what I thought was guidance often came off as judgment. I wasn't building bridges. I was putting up walls. I told myself I was sharing wisdom, a perspective shaped by a life of challenges, lessons, and hard-earned truths. But deep down, if I'm being completely honest, there was something else at play. A quiet thread of envy. I saw their energy, their endless choices, their ability to adapt to a fast-changing world with a fearlessness I didn't fully understand. And somewhere beneath my critiques, I felt left behind. That unspoken discomfort often surfaced in my comments. I'd mutter things like, "They don't have any discipline," or "They can't focus on anything for more than a minute." I thought I was offering insight, but instead of sounding wise, I was building walls. What I believed was concern came across as criticism. Then one day my son looked at me and said, "Dad, you don't get what it's like for us now." It hit me like a punch to the chest, because he was absolutely right. I wasn't trying to understand. I was judging a world I didn't grow up in. Since then, I've been working to shift that. Now, I try to ask questions instead of making statements. I want to hear about their challenges, their ambitions, their version of life. The world they live in is different, yes, but it's not lesser. When I celebrate their strengths instead of fixating on where they differ from me, the conversations become richer. We connect, not clash. 3. Talking about my health constantly. As the years passed, so did the list of ailments. Diabetes, chronic back pain, blood pressure swings, and an ever-growing pharmacy shelf in my kitchen. Somewhere along the way, my answer to, "How are you?" turned into a medical briefing. I'd go into detail about the new medication I was trying or how much my hip ached last night. I convinced myself I was just being real, letting people into my life. But I didn't realize I was casting a shadow over every interaction. Friends stopped calling as often. My sister grew quieter. And then, one afternoon, my neighbor gently said, "I miss hearing about your garden or your hiking stories. You used to tell the best ones." That moment was like a mirror. I saw how my health had slowly become my identity, and how exhausting that must have been for those around me. It's not that they didn't care, it's that they missed the rest of me. So I made a conscious effort to rebalance. I still talk about my struggles, but I also make space for joy. I share recipes I'm trying. I laugh about the time I burned my toast 3 mornings in a row. And you know what? The conversations are lighter, warmer, more connected. People want to be around me again because they see me, not just my medical chart. If you're still watching and these reflections are resonating, please comment the number 1 below. It means the world to me to know we're walking through this together. And thank you for your time. It's the most generous gift you can give. 4. Giving unsolicited advice. This one was hard for me to admit. All I ever wanted was for the people I care about to avoid pain, to be safe, to make good choices. So I gave advice. A lot of it. I told my niece, marry someone stable. I told my son, don't let your kids stare at those screens all day. To me, it felt like love. Like I was passing along knowledge to steer them in the right direction. But to them, it often felt like control. Like I didn't believe they were capable of figuring it out on their own. My advice, however well-meaning, sometimes carried the unspoken message. You're doing it wrong. And that can hurt more than help. One day, my daughter-in-law, she looked me in the eye and said, I appreciate your concern, but we're figuring it out. Her words weren't harsh, but they hit me like a cold splash of water. That was the moment I realized. My constant advice wasn't helping. It was weighing them down. Since then, I've made a conscious shift. I've tried to speak less and listen more. Now, instead of rushing to fix or direct, I ask, would you like my thoughts on that? If the answer is no, I simply stay present. And if the answer is yes, I offer my thoughts gently, without assuming I know what's best. It's humbling to realize that true care often means holding space, not holding the wheel. Respecting their autonomy is the greatest way I can show love. 5. Saying, back in my day, things were better. I used to fall into this pattern all the time. I'd find myself reminiscing about how kids used to ride bikes until sunset, how neighbors knew each other by name, how we'd sit on porches instead of staring at screens. I believed I was sharing wisdom, giving them a glimpse into a better, simpler time. I'd say things like, back in my day, we didn't have all this technology ruining everything. I thought I was making a point. But what I didn't realize was that every time I spoke that way, I was dismissing their world, their experience, their reality. Their eyes would drift, their smiles would tighten. And slowly, I understood. I wasn't inviting them into a warm memory. I was shutting them out of the present. Now, I ask instead. I ask what games they're into, what songs they're obsessed with, what makes them laugh, and what keeps them up at night. I've learned that their world, while different from mine, is filled with creativity, challenges, and deep resilience. And in that shift, from preaching to learning, I've discovered something remarkable. I don't just get to pass down stories. I get to receive them too. And those stories? They've deepened our bond in ways I never expected. 6. Demanding respect without offering any in return. When I was younger, I believed that reaching a certain age automatically earned me respect. I wore my years like a badge of honor, thinking that decades of survival alone meant I deserved reverence. I expected it from my children, from younger people in stores, from anyone I interacted with. I'd stiffen when someone younger challenged my opinion. I'd think to myself, don't they know how much more I've lived than they have? I expected respect in my tone, my posture, my words, assuming it was owed to me. But life has a way of teaching hard truths. The more I insisted on being respected, the more distant people became. My children responded with polite silence but seemed reluctant to engage. My grandchildren avoided deeper conversations altogether. The more I raised my voice to be heard, the more invisible I felt. It wasn't until a particularly tense family dinner that things shifted. My daughter, trying to keep the peace, leaned toward me and said quietly, "Dad, respect isn't just about age. It's about how we treat each other." That sentence stuck with me for weeks. And now, I see respect as something we give before we expect to receive. It's in how we listen, how we speak, how we respond, even when we disagree. It's not about commanding authority. It's about building connection. That moment hit me like a thunderbolt. I realized I hadn't truly been listening, not in the way that mattered. I had been so focused on asserting my authority, on being the one with the life experience, that I completely overlooked the perspectives of others. I forgot to appreciate their viewpoints, their emotions, their ways of expressing themselves. I expected kindness, yet I wasn't always giving it in return. Respect, I came to understand, isn't a reward handed out for living a long life. It's not something you get just because you've been around longer. It's something you earn, moment by moment, through how you treat others. It's not just spoken, it's felt. Now, when my grandchildren talk about their world, I lean in. I might not understand every phrase they use or every app they're excited about, but I ask questions. I listen, really listen. I let them guide the conversation instead of trying to steer it back to what I know. And something beautiful has happened. They light up when we talk. They call me more. They open up about their dreams, their struggles, and their joys. That flow of respect has become mutual, and the warmth I'd long missed has quietly returned. 7. Refusing to learn new things. I used to take pride in being old school. Whenever my kids tried to help me with a smartphone or suggested I get online, I'd laugh it off with a wave of my hand. I've made it this far without that nonsense, I'd say, clinging to the familiar comfort of paper calendars and landline phones. Technology felt foreign, unnecessary, something for younger people who had grown up with it. I figured I didn't need it. After all, I'd built my life without it. But that mindset did more than keep me in the dark. It built a wall between me and the people I cared about most. The wake-up call came when my granddaughter invited me to a virtual birthday party. I didn't know how to use the app, so instead of asking for help, I made an excuse and missed it entirely. Later, she sent a photo, her face lit by candlelight, beaming with joy. I stared at that picture for a long time, a deep, hollow ache sitting in my chest. I missed her laughter. I missed her saying, "I miss you, Grandpa." I missed stories about her friends and school, precious pieces of her life, all because I was too proud to ask how to use a button on a screen. That moment changed me. I swallowed my pride and asked my son for help. At first, it was frustrating. My fingers hit the wrong buttons. I forgot steps again and again. But I kept at it, and slowly, I began to learn. Now, every time I send a text or join a video call, I feel like I'm building a bridge back to the people I love. I may not be a tech expert, but I'm present. I hear their laughter. I see their faces light up on the screen. I'm connected again, and those little "I miss you, Grandpa" moments, they're worth every ounce of effort. 8. Comparing myself to others constantly. I used to look at others and constantly wonder, why does he seem healthier than I am? What does he have that I don't? Or I'd hear that a friend's children came over every weekend, and I'd feel this sharp sting. Her kids are always around. Why don't mine make time for me? I'd scroll through social media, seeing old classmates traveling the world, smiling in photos with their extended families at big holiday dinners. And with each image, each story, something inside me quietly eroded. I didn't notice it at first, but slowly, all those comparisons began to chip away at my sense of peace. The more I looked outward, the less satisfied I felt within. Jealousy doesn't build you up. It pulls you down. I was so caught up in measuring my life against others that I forgot to appreciate the beauty of my own. I overlooked simple but meaningful things, like the fact that I could still take my daily walk to the park, breathing in the morning air. Or that, even if my children couldn't visit often, they never forgot to call just to check in. One afternoon, as I sat quietly on the porch, I saw my neighbor laughing with his grandkids. That old familiar pang rose in my chest. But instead of retreating into that bitterness, I paused and asked myself, why not shift the focus? What can I do right now with what I have? It was like a window cracked open in a room I didn't realize had grown stale. So I made a small change. I invited my son over for coffee instead of waiting for him to remember. I sent a handwritten card to my daughter, just to say I was thinking of her. Slowly, I stopped comparing my health, my family, and my life to everyone else's. I started noticing and appreciating what was already mine, and the bitterness that had taken root. It began to loosen its grip, replaced by something far more healing: gratitude. I wasn't racing anyone anymore. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was simply living, and for the first time in a long while, that felt like real freedom. 9. Neglecting my appearance. There came a time when I let myself go without even realizing it. I'd shrug and say, "I'm old," as I pulled on a faded t-shirt and mismatched socks. I told myself it didn't matter what I looked like. Who was I trying to impress anyway? My hair grew wild, my beard became patchy and untrimmed, and I'd head out the door without so much as a glance in the mirror. What I didn't understand then was that my outward appearance wasn't just about how others saw me. It reflected how I saw myself. One afternoon, walking past a storefront, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. The man staring back at me looked tired, slouched, and far older than I felt inside. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and there was a frown etched deep into his face. In that moment, it hit me. I hadn't just been ignoring my clothes or grooming. I'd been neglecting myself. That evening, I made a decision. Nothing grand, just a fresh haircut, a trimmed beard, and a clean, well-fitted shirt I hadn't worn in years. I stood a little taller. My smile returned more easily, and the impact, far greater than I expected. At the grocery store, strangers began to strike up conversation. My neighbor greeted me with a warm, "You're looking sharp today." And when my grandkids saw me, one of them giggled and said, "Grandpa, you look fancy." It wasn't about vanity. It was about pride. Healthy pride. Taking care of my appearance became an act of respect, not just for others, but for myself. It reminded me that I still mattered, that I was still present, and that how I felt on the inside could be reflected on the outside. And as I walked out the door each day, just a bit more put together, I felt something return. Confidence, warmth, and the quiet dignity that I had unknowingly set aside. When I smiled, the world seemed to smile back. It was such a simple, almost effortless thing, but it carried a lesson I wish I had embraced earlier. Taking care of your appearance isn't about seeking praise or turning heads. It's about honoring the life you're still living, the experiences you still have left to enjoy, and the people who still want to connect with you. A clean shirt or a warm smile can say, "I still care. I'm still here." And that kind of message goes deeper than we realize. 10. Being grumpy, short-tempered, and negative. For many years, I convinced myself that my bluntness was a form of honesty. I told myself I was just keeping it real, that I wasn't sugarcoating the truth. So when a friend offered advice, I'd snap back with a sharp reply. When a family member showed concern, I'd shrug it off with a sarcastic comment. I'd complain about the weather, the traffic, politics. Anything and everything felt like fair game. But beneath that surface of truthfulness, I was actually building walls. My negativity wasn't offering wisdom. It was pushing people away. And worse, it was choking the kindness others were trying to show me. One day, at a family gathering, my daughter was about to share a joyful story. But I noticed her pause, just for a second. She hesitated, scanning my face, unsure if I'd roll my eyes or dismiss her excitement. That small pause, it pierced me. My grumpiness wasn't harmless. It was dimming the light in those I loved most. It hit me then. Being negative isn't the same as being real. It's a choice. And too often, I had chosen to complain rather than connect. Since then, I've been trying, bit by bit, to choose differently. 11. Acting like a burden. I had this habit of refusing help with a quick, stubborn wave of my hand. "I've got it," I'd say, even when I didn't. When friends invited me for coffee, I'd decline, telling myself I was too tired or that I didn't want to be a bother. I'd avoid phone calls, miss out on invitations, and then sit in the quiet of my living room, wondering why I felt so alone. There was one winter night in particular that still lingers in my memory. My neighbor invited me over for dinner, just a casual meal. I politely declined, said I didn't want to impose. Later, I heard the clinking of dishes and bursts of laughter through the walls. That sound, that joy I had turned down, settled into the silence around me like a weight. That night, I realized something painful. I wasn't sparing others. I was robbing us all of connection. My pride had dressed itself up as strength, but in truth, it was shielding me from what I needed most: companionship. I had mistaken self-reliance for emotional distance, and that distance was costing me dearly. 12. Forgetting to say 2 simple words. Thank you. I used to think gratitude was implied. If someone helped me carry groceries or ran an errand, I believed a nod or a smile was enough. Why make a big deal out of something they should be happy to do? But over time, I saw the cracks in that thinking. I remember a colleague who once spent hours helping me sort through old paperwork. I thanked them with a quick nod and went back to what I was doing. Later, I caught a look in their eyes. Not anger, but something softer and sadder. A sense that their effort had gone unnoticed, that their kindness had been taken for granted. That moment stayed with me, because saying thank you isn't just a polite gesture, it's an acknowledgement. A way to let someone know you see them, that you value not just what they did, but the care behind it. I've come to understand that those 2 words, when spoken with sincerity, can heal more than we realize. They create warmth, build trust, and remind people they matter. And for far too long, I had let that opportunity slip by. That simple failure to express gratitude weakened bonds I could have easily strengthened, just by pausing for a moment and saying, "Thank you." I'm not sharing these reflections to burden you with guilt or to dwell on past regrets. I'm sharing them because at 78, sitting in a quiet room with my memories as company, I've come to understand a painful truth. It's often the smallest habits that slowly push away the people who love us most. It's rarely about grand betrayals or explosive arguments. No, it's the quiet, repeated choices, snapping instead of listening, withdrawing instead of engaging, criticizing instead of appreciating. Over time, those small patterns build walls. They chip away at warmth, erode trust, and dim the connection we so deeply crave. But here's the hopeful part. It's never too late to change, no matter how many birthdays you've celebrated. These days, I make it a conscious habit to say thank you more often. Whether it's a warm greeting from a cashier, a neighbor bringing over soup, or simply someone holding the door open, I acknowledge it. And it's not just about manners. It's about recognizing that kindness still exists in the world and that it deserves to be seen. I've also learned to pause before speaking, to truly listen and let others express themselves without rushing to judge or interrupt. That silence, once uncomfortable, has become a space for real connection. Even the act of dressing neatly, just to walk to the market or sit on the porch, feels different now. It's no longer about appearance. It's a sign of respect, not just for myself, but for the people who might meet me along the way. It says, I still care. And perhaps most importantly, I've found the courage to apologize. I used to think saying I was wrong meant surrendering my authority or losing face. But now I see it clearly. It's not weakness. It's love. It's humility with heart. Just last week, I called my son to apologize for brushing off his advice about my health. The relief in his voice, the gentleness that returned in our conversation, reminded me that reconciliation is always possible when pride steps aside. If you're over 60 and see even one of these habits in your own life, don't carry shame. Aging may bring wisdom, but it also brings deeply rooted habits, some of which we've repeated for decades without even realizing. The beauty of where we are right now is that we still have the power to grow. Every small effort, a kind word, a listening ear, a sincere thank you, is a step toward healing and strengthening the relationships that mean the most. Maybe it's reaching out to someone you've drifted from. Maybe it's choosing not to criticize or simply being present when someone needs to talk. If this speaks to you, I invite you to leave a comment below. What's one small habit you're ready to change? Let's inspire one another, because these steps, however small, lead to greater connection, compassion, and joy. If this reflection touched you, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's continue this journey together, living with kindness, intention, and gratitude at every stage of life. May you be blessed with good health, lasting happiness, and peaceful days ahead. And don't forget to subscribe to my Healthy Aging Blueprint channel.